This video is brought to you by Squarespace. NERF is a constantly changing ecosystem, an ever-evolving world where we find new, unique, and innovative ways to just fling a piece of foam downrange, probably at somebody at sufficient velocity for it to be fun. But it doesn't always have to be about high velocity. It doesn't always have to be about having the best blaster with the absolute most when it comes to advantages on the battlefield. And sometimes, to head into the future, we gotta sometimes stop chasing that monster that is higher FPS and embrace sheer fun. That will never not be the best thing ever. What we're taking a look at today is a beta prototype Alpha 1. This is, I believe, only one of these in existence right now. And yes, it is technically a thing that you could purchase for actual currency. Would you want to? Well, that depends. Is your entire existence in this hobby based around getting higher numbers over a chronograph and posting them online, and you completely disregard everything else? You know who you are. Then no, this is not for you, because this is not going to be a high performance machine. It's also not the fastest firing thing ever, and yes, it does use shells. You don't have to use shells, but I honestly don't understand why you would get something like this if you weren't going to be using shells. Allow me to introduce Domochevsky's MOTORTIER, another cyberpunk-esque weapon that is used in a fictional universe where trains have to always arrive on time, regardless of the circumstances. Domochevsky, where have we heard that name before? Well, he made one of the best shotguns you could possibly use in the hobby if you're stuck with using full-length foam darts. We're just gonna call it the rail cleaner because I still, after all this time, cannot pronounce its actual German name. The MOTORTIER is just one of many projects that Domochevsky has been working on, and I already know how this is going to go. I know you've seen the video, but if you haven't seen the video, this is another thing that Domochevsky's working on. And you gotta let me know down in that comment section right now if I have to get that. Because if I have to get that, I will get that. And, you know, while you're down there, can you please hit like and subscribe, you know, do all that kind of stuff. Even ring that bell if you're feeling generous, because, man, YouTube algorithm sucks. And I quite honestly don't even know what to call this thing for the title of this video. How do I market this blaster? So even though you probably really don't want to buy something like this, because it's like a beta prototype kind of thing. I'm like the first person besides Domochevsky and his close circle to get their hands on one of these pieces of crazy German engineering. It's a flywheel bullpup rifle SMG thing. In the NERF category, it shoots cut-down NERF darts, and it uses shells and double-stacked 30-round magazines. And I'm gonna take off these glasses because I have no idea what that's doing to being able to see my eyes. It is full auto, it is janky, and it is beautiful in so many different ways. I can't rant and rave about how much I love this thing enough. Would I ever actually want to use it in Nerf War? Maybe just for fun, just mostly for flexing on people. I mean, I'm so good. I've been nerfing for so long. I obviously don't have to worry about little handicaps like actually using shells and only having a couple of magazines and I actually don't know how hard this thing hits right now, but I can tell you that its actual firing performance, you'll see that in a little bit. But first things first, it's a bullpup. Here's the mag release and here's the magazine. Although it's in I can't tell if it's a good place or a bad place. It's ergonomic enough, I would say. Despite the fact that this very loosely constitutes a grip, ironically enough, it's comfortable. You have one tactical rail on the side of the blaster to add precisely one. I mean, you could seriously put an optic on it. I wouldn't recommend it, probably for like a flashlight or something like that. It features external reciprocating action. This is integral to the function of the blaster, and you actually do have to make sure that this thing is always choked all the way back. As of right now, there is no automatic like return for this system. So before you remove the magazine and slam a new one in, you want to make sure you prime that all the way back. It doesn't lock back or anything. You just kind of have to make sure it's not in the way of you pulling out the magazine. It's got a cooling fan with LEDs in it, which is obviously super important to the function of the blaster. Arguably, this would keep your flywheel cage at a much better temperature, so you don't have to worry about it ever melting off on you. And yes, this uses standard Strife flywheel cages, so technically I could shove my Eclipse cage in this thing, and I'm debating if I want to do that, because otherwise it's like, I guess the performance is whatever you want it to be, because it's a flywheel blaster. That's one of the reasons why I like flywheel blasters. On the top of the blaster, we've got a voltmeter, which is super important. That tells you when your battery is about to die, and that will prevent you from killing your LiPo. Where is that LiPo stored? In the front grip, in the foregrip area, I guess is what you would call it, held together by a magnet, much like the flywheel access door right here, which will also allow you to clear jams out. Considering it's running a worker cage from like 2017 in here, I would probably want to change that, but Domochevsky told me he put in there what worked. And I'm sure trying to get something like this functioning properly was very difficult, and I don't know exactly if I want to mess around with that. This is how you turn on the blaster. And it features, this is one of the first, I don't know why this is not more common, but one of the first 3D printed blasters I've ever gotten my hands on that is specifically built to have LEDs in it. And that makes me wonder why this is not more of a thing, because LEDs just make everything better. They look absolutely amazing, even down to the switch, which has an LED on the top of it that I'm literally shining against the wall in front of me right now. And if you want to shut the entire thing down, including the voltmeter, you could do it in one quick flick of the finger, which is something Dr. Flux figured out. I don't know if Domochevsky planned that, but that's kind of how it works, which is awesome. But even cooler is the fact that every single time you fire this thing, pay attention to this spot back here, please. Oh, I'm sorry, was that not cool enough? Well, it also does it on the other side, too. So cool. This thing is meant to be a spectacle pretty much above everything else. More importantly, something that I personally really want to point out is Domochevsky's trigger system here. I've never seen another trigger system like this, and quite honestly, I wish every single blaster that was flywheel or full-auto, blah, 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 had this trigger system. Domochevsky did something I haven't seen. Yes, that is an exposed micro switch, but that little lever right there that you click in, that's your rev. And then you pull the trigger all the way and it hits another micro switch and fires the blaster. And that makes it incredibly tactile and awesome to use. Cooler yet is the fact that this thing uses a double stacked magazine, which is something we don't see all too often in the Nerf ecosystem. And again, this thing is predominantly meant to be used with shells. It uses the exact same shell that you see with the Fly Point, the Winchester, and of course, the Renfield from Shellington Arms. And I'm probably forgetting other blasters that use them, but those are the big three, same exact shells. And none of those are full auto. Load a dart into the shell, and then load the shell into the magazine. And yes, this is how the magazine is supposed to look, with the front of the dart going into this like loop right here, which prevents the shells from popping out. Load the magazine into the blaster, make sure our bolt is all the way back, put that in there, and then we can rev, and then fire. And yes, while I almost did it myself right then. I'm gonna end up breaking one of these things. That is something that you have to drill into your head, that you have to, if you do not practice that, you will probably break something. That is a spicy rate of fire. Is it the fastest firing blaster ever? I don't even think it's in the top 10. What makes it seem like it's firing so fast though, is just the actions of the shells popping out of it. It honestly isn't shooting so ridiculously fast. It's shooting a really good speed, but it's not the fastest firing thing ever. It's just the sheer volume of shells pouring out the side of this thing that makes it feel like it fires way faster than it has any right to be. Otherwise, it feels like it's hitting like 6-7 rounds per second, which is, it's fast, but you could do faster in Nerf. This video is brought to you by Squarespace, and if there's one thing I need you to know, it's that Squarespace isn't just a place for squares. It's a place for anybody who wants to have a one-stop shop for building a website and existing on the World Wide Web. Don't know anything about creating a website? That's what's so great about Squarespace, because you can make a website using a template that's made for practically anything on the internet, and they offer you powerful tools to build your website to suit your needs. Can you click, drag, and type? Well, then you could build an immaculate website using Squarespace. Not only do you have tools to build professional-looking websites fast, but Squarespace also offers you tools to juice up and take your website to the next level. How about a members-only section on your website where only people who support you can access it? Blogs, galleries, email campaigns, calendars, set up appointments. You can even sell stuff through Squarespace, have your own website marketplace, and import items you might already have on Etsy. There's multiple templates for all this and more to act as a jump-off point for you to create your website. And once you're finished, you can even buy the domain for your website through Squarespace itself. Not only do they offer things like .com, .org, .net, but even some fancy titles like .art. I'm trying to check if .walrus is a thing. And best of all, you can give all these features a shot right now by going to squarespace.com/Walcom S7. And when you're ready to pull the trigger and launch yourself into the World Wide Web, use code Walcom S7 to save yourself 10% on either website or domain on Squarespace. That's squarespace.com/Walcom S7, promo code Walcom S7. So what are you waiting for? Go out there and build a website and a domain that's about whatever the heck you want. The powers and secrets of the World Wide Web are literally in your hands. So if this thing is so absolutely awesome, why shouldn't you buy one right now? Well, this thing, at right now, this moment, without me doing anything to it, the way it showed up, it doesn't really fire all that good. The performance is whatever. It's where it probably needs to be for something like this. And again, you can swap out the cage to make it hit a little bit harder, but the problem is that most of those darts don't come out anywhere near straight out to the barrel, which is a bit of an issue if you're actually trying to hit something with this thing. Also, it uses shells. Now, it doesn't have to use shells. There is an adapter that you can slot in the mag well that will allow you to use just a standard Talon mag, which is cool for compatibility reasons. If you want to use this thing a little bit more competitively, but don't have to worry about picking up shells off the ground, or you ran out of ammo for your 2 shell-fed magazines and still want to play the blaster without reloading a bunch of shells, that is, of course, totally an option for you, but that obviously also detracts from what the blaster is supposed to do. Awesome feature to have, sure, but not the draw of the blaster. And I actually don't know how much this thing's gonna cost, but I'm also going to assume it's not cheap. My reasoning for that, I paid a couple $100s for it myself, and you gotta think, this is like an entirely hand-built thing. A lot of people don't seem to understand this, and they just complain about the prices of 3D printed blasters like they're trying to compete with the facts of Dart Zone and stuff like that. And Domochevsky is not trying to compete with Dart Zone when it comes to blaster prices. This is practically a hand-built item. Yes, it is 3D printed, but somebody, Domochevsky, had to spend dozens of hours in CAD, hundreds of hours probably printing out things, testing, see what works, see what doesn't, through many iterations. And even to just get this one here, he had to put this thing together and hand solder everything and put it in place and make sure it functioned and all of that. You don't just turn the 3D printer on and come back the next morning and have this. So it's probably a pretty good thing that this is not the best blaster ever, even though it is one of the best blasters ever because of just sheer absurdity when it comes to being something so cool and different, and oh, it's just a massive flex on everybody. You could imagine like grabbing this thing, loading up your magazines, running out in the field and getting a solid like maybe a minute, 2 minutes of having fun, and then needing either more shells or more magazines. These things, you know, you got to put a dart into the shell and load the shell into the magazine, and that takes a lot of time. You spend way more time doing that than you do actually playing with the blaster. But if you wanted something that did this, well, this is really the only way I know of that you can get that kind of function going. I know GDOP himself tried really hard to get a full auto kind of mechanism when it comes to shell ejection, and that whole entire project was abandoned, but eventually turned into the Flypoint pistol. But the main issue that I have, and maybe this is a plus, don't use fresh darts with this. You can't really, like, the shells are really tight, so if you have fresh darts, you have even more tight because the foam hasn't really compressed yet. The dart doesn't fully get pushed out of the shell and into the flywheel cage and you just wind up jamming. So you want to use worn darts, or take like brand new darts, kind of roll them in your fingers a little bit and then put them in the shell. which is terrible for your darts. It's good if you have a bunch of spare darts, some that have been kicking around that are still usable, but you really wouldn't want to use them all that much. Perfect for this blaster. But when it comes down to it, there's nothing quite like the MOTORTIER here. And that's what makes it so desirable. If you want that kind of function, this is how you get it. You'll pay whatever you want for it. If you have a LARP or something going on, this thing would be excellent for that because it's not meant to be a performance-driven blaster. It's meant to be something that's fun and flashy to use. And if you want one right this second, there will be a link down there to Domochevsky's Etsy where you can check out his wares and perhaps purchase one of these things. But he is just one man building completely custom blasters. I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of a wait list, and I'm sure his prices will reflect that. But the MOTORTIER is an intelligently designed blaster that delivers in what it's meant to do. Spray shells out and fling foam down range at pretty high velocities and be really, really cool looking when doing it. And for that, I give it absolutely a full recommendation if those specific things are what you're looking for and you have the money to burn on it. Otherwise, it's a cool video, and if you ever get a chance to fire one of these things, I highly recommend you do that because it is super fun. But that's all I've got for you. I'm Walcom S7. Thank you very much for watching this video. Chances are if you got to the end, you like what I do here, so please hit like, get subscribed, leave a comment, ring the bell, do all that algorithmic garbage to help the channel grow so it can help the hobby grow. And of course, I hope to see you in an entirely different video.
You gotta up,